Hello, and thank you all for joining us for our panel podcast today. Today, I'm really excited. We're talking about a topic that we did a lot of research this year, and we also have leaders from, first of all, 3 leading companies in observability, but also companies that are taking different approaches to achieving key goals that are reported in our research. So I'll let them go and introduce themselves and their companies. All the company starts with C, so you got to figure out alphabetical order. So Mehdi, I guess you can go first.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Boyan. It's great to be among some really great companies and leaders. My name is Mehdi. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Catchpoint. We are in the end user monitoring space. We've been around since 2008, and we care about all things end users.
Martin?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the alphabetical order, but Martin here. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Chronosphere. Company's about 3 years old. We provide a cloud-native focused observability platform. History of the company is myself and my co-founder used to run the observability team at Uber. We built a lot of our technologies there to solve for this particular use case in these cloud-native environments, and we build on top of that technology now to provide our hosted offering today here at Chronosphere.
Ariel Assaraf, co-founder, CEO at Coralogix. We take an approach of analyze before storing, so streaming analysis for logs, metrics, tracing, and security information.
Thank you. One place I want to start, and real quick, there's an interesting data point in our recent study. By the way, congratulations to all of you. All 3 companies were named top 20 vendors in managing IT performance in 2022. A report that was published last week. This is a chart that was in that study. There's a lot of confusion out there in the market. What is observability? It's caused by many reasons. It has a very high promise. There are organizations understanding increasingly that when they start deploying microservices, cloud-native environments, that some of the traditional tools about 10, 15, 20 years ago are not as effective, and they can, so observability is became a really hot topic, but over half respondents in our survey said that they are not really sure what exactly it is. And here's one data point that 70% of them say that's the next generation monitoring. So I mean, even before we get into that, is observability technology category? Is it a management approach, or it's an outcome?
I'll go first. Go ahead, Ariel.
I think, first of all, in my point of view, I think observability is a very loaded word when you think of where you want to get to in the stability and performance of your system. First of all, it's a very passive word. You observe, and when we come from a world of everyone are talking about proactiveness and being able to prevent issues, the word observe is not exactly the one that you'd like. So we tend to see observability as a stage. At part of the move to cloud, observability is the first stage of, first of all, being able to see what happens, all the way down from the end user point of view to the microservices infrastructure network. And I think it'll evolve into something a lot more proactive of how do you automatically detect, automatically remediate stuff and actually make decisions. Observability is a term that to me describes the ability to answer any question that relates to the information that your systems generate. Unlike monitoring, which is to detect any abnormality that your systems generate, here is to ask any questions also on things that are not known or things that are not anticipated or watched by your teams. So that's at least my point of view.
So I'm going to be the controversial one here. If that's okay with all of us. But the reason why you have some of these metrics, Boyan, on your screen is because we and others are creating a lot of confusion in the marketplace, right? Everybody has defined observability as something. I like Ariel's definition, actually, because it is very passive in so many ways. In a lot of companies, we are throwing the word observability, like other people have renamed ops teams to SRE teams. Hey, let's put a new brand right around an existing thing. I think it's also because we still don't understand, or we do the mistake of like buying tools without trying to understand why are we buying a tool to start with. And so if you're buying a monitoring tool, an observability tool, or whatever other buzzword we might come up with, the four of us by the end of this podcast, it's like, what problem are we solving? Are you? And I don't think people are still answering or even asking that right question before you go and buy tools. People buy an observability tool and then it's like, wait, what do I do with it? And I see that across our customers, right? It's like, oh, Mehdi, we have 3 observability platforms. We still don't catch problems. It's like, well, maybe you should trash them all out then, because it's not doing what it's supposed to do. But we need vendors. We need to be a little bit more, working with the analysts. We need to be more forceful in defining things better, in my opinion. So, not just buzzwords.
And I'm going to attempt to maybe merge those two responses here the best I can. I think, what you have on the screen, organizations define observability as a next generation monitoring is definitely interesting. I would say, for me, while it is a very passive word, I would say, I don't know if observability and monitoring are necessarily that different if you look at it from an outcome perspective. Sure. I think, the questions that we want to ask, for me, we do want to ask questions, but they're fairly, for me at least, they're fairly static things that have not changed for many years. In my mind, for these systems, you just want to be able to have these systems tell you when something is wrong. You want to be able to triage the impact. How bad is the impact? Is it something I have to fix now, or is it something I can fix later? And you want to be able to find the root cause. And I think that's been true for many decades, and it's still true today, even though there may be a new flavor today, and we may be asking much more. Yep. These questions may be much harder to answer in the modern architecture because those are more complicated. I think those are the questions that we still want to answer. So, I think taking it from an outcome approach of, can I answer these particular questions? However, the thing that has changed in the world is that the architecture, Bojan, as you mentioned at the beginning, has changed. We're all attempting to run microservices, much more complicated infrastructure these days. So answering these questions are much harder, and hence maybe require a different set of tools today than were previously existed. However, I think that the root of what we're trying to get to, the outcome has always been the same. And I think, to Mehdi's point, focusing on the outcome is the way to go. That's the way to cut through all of the noise that's out there. Can I achieve what I want and work backwards from there?
Right. And I will take Martin's answer even one step further, which is the outcome is mean time to repair, right? At the end of the day, we buy these tools, whatever they're called, to do one thing and one thing only, to run a business better. Right. Yep. Nobody goes and spends millions of dollars on monitoring tools just for the giggles. Right. And if they do, maybe but, some people do. I see that. Right. But at the end of the day, people have to remember that IT technology teams are here to make Uber runs better, to make Google work better, that's the outcome. We are the arm that enables the business to deliver their business results. And so the monitoring teams, observability teams, whatever you want to call them, and whatever tools they use, need to do one thing and one thing only. Am I allowing the business to run better? If you cannot answer those things, if you have an outage for 6 hours and none of your tools can answer those questions, what's broken, where it's broken, what changed, what happened, where can I go and deploy people to fix things? If you don't have those answers, then you're just blowing money on stuff that is completely useless. So might as well turn it off.
I'd add to that. I think that, and this is the fine distinction between observability and monitoring to me. Monitoring is really to that mean time to detect, mean time to resolve, remediate, whatever R you want to use. In observability, there's there are a lot of other questions that you can answer, specifically in the world of cloud and microservices. Maybe it's cost optimization and resource utilization. Maybe it's performance and SLOs that you're committed to your clients. Maybe it's all the way down, left to the R&D. How fast am I deploying? How secure are my deployments? Compliance questions that are a lot of time critical for businesses to run their organization. So all these things are now adding more layers, and the more you distribute your organization, the more you let more people deploy, more people create changes. You need to ask more questions. And I think, in reality, I kind of agree with what you're saying. Most people are basically doing the mean time to detect, mean time to resolve. But where observability wants to get, at least, is to be able to ask all these unknowns that are many times hidden within the data of the organization.
I think we're all, we're agreeing.
One quick thing on that. This goes back to Mehdi's point. We have these, DJ started 2015, but I've been an analyst for 17 years and running my own company since 2010. So we have IP of data, which is 12 years now. And if you look at things like root cause detection, inability to proactively prevent performance issues, there's no trend line. It's flat from like last 10 years. It's around 60-65%. Mehdi mentioned, we have 3 monitoring tools and we have all these problems. People have tens of monitoring tools. Recently, I spoke to a large bank here in Boston. They were having some issues with application performance. There was 6 people on call, and you can tell frustration in there, and you can feel it. And I said, "What kind of APM tools do you have? What do you use?"
All of them.
All of them.
Yes.
As soon as we hear there's
Boyan, I was on a call yesterday, and the customer said, "Mehdi, what else do you recommend?" It's like, what do you mean? What else? It's like, we have these 3 vendors. Like, what you think a 4th one is going to solve the problems? And this is the lunacy, right? Again, at the end of the day, take a step back. What are we trying to do? And this is, I think, we as vendors with people like you, Boyan, we need to really educate people. Again, the unknown. I love that, right? That's literally the majority of the problems that customers face today are in one bucket, which is the unknown. I don't know that I don't know I have a problem, number one, and I don't know how to solve it. And that's where the 90% of, in my opinion, of the issues I get involved with some of our customers, we see, and none of the other monitoring tools, observability, whatever tools they use can answer. But it's also, it's not, we need to stop with the tools, right? And we need to ask questions. What are we trying to do? And it really starts there. Listen, I've been a practitioner. I've been, like Martin, I was at DoubleClick buying all kind of monitoring tools at the $20 million budget. And I was like, okay, buy, because we were trying to solve problems. But then it's like, when you stop and ask yourself, what are we trying to do? That literally things became a little bit clearer.
I think, Mehdi, to add on that a little bit, not only are people trying to buy multiple tools, I also see that problem on the instrumentation perspective. People are like, okay, let me add more instrumentation without looking at it from an outcome perspective either.
Correct.
Let me add more traces. Let me add more metrics.
Yes,
let me add
more
logs.
data.
More equals better. Like more will
Right.
solve the problems. And I think that, in addition to the proliferation of tools, also really doesn't help the industry here. And perhaps, points to the reason of the second stat you have there, where people are starting to see that the cost of these things are definitely outweighing the benefits, because you're buying more tools to try to solve the problem. You're trying to produce more data to solve the problem. You're not really,
which costs money to store, right?
Which
People don't think about that, right?
Exactly, and it's almost looking at the problem backwards from the inputs that you pass into the system, as opposed to what is the outcome, what is the value I get, and then working your way backwards from there into, okay, well, what data do I need to produce in order to get that outcome in the most cost-efficient manner there. So, we talked a lot about tool proliferation, that's happening, but I also see a lot of data proliferation as well. And it's adding to the same amount of problems.
Which, by the way, now is adding a new industry, right? We're hearing about data observability. Now you need a data observability tool and a data observability team. So to make sure that all the data is quote unquote good, right, and valid. So it's just
we have a saying here that grows faster than revenue. There's no company in the world
yes.
where revenue outpaced the data growth, and that's that's a great way to kill your margins as data extends. And I think, Mehdi, to your point, a lot of it is related to the vendors. So all those instrumentations and data layers are created by the industry, and then there's always a good argument. By the way, I'm assuming there's always a good mix of different instrumentations and data collectors for an organization, but it's very hard to pick, and organizations just do all. And we run into companies. We just had a conversation with a client in the US a couple months ago that was a 40 people company that generates 5 terabytes of log data alone every day. And when you look at it, and that's the size of some large financial institutes in New York. And when you look at it and you ask how come, and they're saying, we want to view everything. And in theory, it sounds well, but then in reality, my suggestion to them was you gotta order your data, because even if we came in today and it's a great deal for us, I know that I'm going to lose you guys within a couple of years, because as you scale, it'll become 150 terabytes a day, and you just won't make it.
Correct. Yeah. And I think, Ariel, like as a vendor, as a partner, people appreciate that level of candor and honesty, because you're a good steward of their money and their budget. And so I think that's always a great thing for us to do.
Yeah, I was going to say this probably a problem that the industry and the vendors in the industry have created, right? Generally, more data and more tools equals more revenue for all the vendors. It's actually a problem that companies like ourselves have created. And I'm really glad I'm on a call with the 2 other companies that don't think that way, that do think that, hey, we want to give you the value because we won't be able to bring you value and keep you as a customer long term if we can't solve that problem for you. So we're 100% on the same page there as well.
And to add to that, I mean, you folks are not a very good example of confusion that's being caused in this market, because you have a unique approach, and we just talked about it, and I think it's obvious. But the reason why people are confused what it is, observability became a perfect term to address a lot of things that were piling up in the market for years. Persistent problems like that, the monitoring at one point became a dirty word that maybe how many times you heard, why do we need a monitoring tool? What do you do? Like, we do AI ops all of a sudden, something. So observability, and I heard this from VC firms, that they what's appealing to investing in observability as opposed to something that's like, I mentioned AIOps. AIOps, if you first hear about it for the first time, sounds like a tool.
It sounds delicious.
sounds like a science project. And observability sounds like an outcome, something that you want. And it became really hot, and for people that actually. So what are you selling now? We're not selling monitoring. We're selling observability. Oh, okay. Cool. So let's go back to our marketing deck and let's do control find the function in Excel, and everywhere we had monitoring. We will observe. We will and confuse the heck out of people. We all remember what happened with APM market. That at one point that everybody wanted to be APM vendor, and then very quickly that even folks that are leaders in that space, market share wise, don't want to talk about it. But what I think is really interesting, there is okay, we'll talk about cost a little later, but other 2 points that executives, so we did a slice of data and we asked them what they see value observability, how it fits their agenda, that they can enable technology as a competitive advantage, that it can all these things we talked about Uber, and we talk about companies that are using technology as a competitive advantage, that observability has become really important enabler. When you ask IT practitioners, they see it as a tactical initiative, and it really is, because you bought it to make these points, solve MTTR, to reduce cost and things like that. But survey as a whole, if we ask, okay, regardless of what observability is, you start the survey with the, do you have initiatives, solutions, something, observability, everyone who said yes, or we are in the process. Got another question, what are the goals? The best way to define something new in the market is to ask people what you're trying to do with it, as opposed to come up with and number one goal is to deliver exceptional digital experiences. That is not tactical, and that has a huge promise and a lot of potential if you can get by that confusion part that somebody sell you monitoring tools from 10 years ago to address this. You look at the other goals, balance between speed and reliability. A lot of it has to do with competitive advantage and using technology as a differentiator. Again, blind spots kind of brings us back to the monitoring piece. Resilience, maximize the impact of software teams. A lot of these things, enabling cloud native approach. A lot of this stuff, all of these things are very, very strategic. And to be able to address these issues, one key challenge that we saw in the research is that people are saying observability tools that don't provide business context are very hard to use for purposes of achieving these goals. That, for example, you look at the observability landscape. Mehdi knows this very well. Number one goal is exceptional digital experiences, and nobody talks about monitoring user experience as part of observability. It's really hard to manage something you can't measure, obviously, and a lot of these things around it are really about processes, about reducing inefficiencies, reducing engineering toll. I mean, a lot of it has to do with the stuff we talked about before, MTTR and dealing with performance issues. How do we get to from MTTR to this in the middle?
Well, you have that 68%. I mean, I think, and this is what I said earlier, what's the outcome, right? At the end of the day, I mean, Martin was at Uber. When Uber was created, they could barely make a reservation without that entire system crashing, from what I heard, right? So in order for them to survive, they had to build a very good system, distributed, multiple cloud, all that good stuff, right? But it was about being able to deliver that digital experience, right? So I think if we all need to sit down in a room, like, again, I put not as a vendor, but if I put back my hat as a practitioner, I would sit down with my business partners. I go, what are we trying to do here? Oh, I'm trying to deliver an ad in 150 milliseconds. Why? Why should we care? Well, so we can kick the competition out, so we can become the best, whatever. So performance and user experience or digital experiences is not a feature. It's the most important feature these days, right? I mean, nobody is going to come say, you know what, I'm just going to create a website that sells stuff, but I'll deliver that web page in 60 seconds and nobody will care, right? So at the end of the day, we need to start with that. What is the business outcome? And then you will have the tools to do observability, monitoring, log management, all that good stuff. But it starts with, like, we are here to make the business, like, I cannot emphasize that enough. It's like all this shit only matters because it's about the business. They're the one that pay our check. They're the one that pay the vendors. So make the business run better. That's number one goal. Number one OKR.
First of all, I agree 100%. And then there's the things that are under that, which is, how do you do that in a compliant and secure way? How do you do that in a way that is resource utilized, so you're not losing money on the infrastructure? How do you do that quickly? How do you respond fast to the market? So not just the performance and the experience, but also features. So if your competitors came up with something, how fast can you respond and deploy a new version without breaking stuff and damaging that one key thing? So all in all, you want to provide the best experience you can to your users while maintaining compliant, secured, utilized, and fast-paced organization.
So quick question there. I'm sorry, Martin. So that's a lot of stuff. I mean, and these are all legit goals that most of the companies are experiencing. And what we have on the screen here is also a lot of stuff. Is that too much for any class, any management approach? Are people expecting too much, or what is solving this is really something else?
In my point of view, this is an organizational decision. It's not tooling at all. It's mostly about how you build the responsibility model of engineering. If there are 100 engineers and then 5 SREs need to answer all the questions that I just put out there, there's no chance they're going to make it. But if every team has ownership of their service and everyone do on-call rotations and everyone are responsible as part of the definition of done to build the right visualizations, the right alerting, the right data, which is not too much and not too few data points, then you're capable of doing that, because our engineering is probably the largest and for sure one of the smartest organizations in the company. So if you're able to utilize and harness their power and give them those objectives, and exactly like Mehdi said, put the North Star out there for engineering, explain to them that everything that they're doing, and you know, engineers, they like to refactor, they like to add new cool packages, they like to add tools. But if you wrap their head around the concept of, guys, this is our North Star, this is where we're getting. Every feature you build has to have built-in KPIs that track whatever you need to track in order to get there. Every day when you get to work, you need to think of every feature that you release. Would it get us closer to that goal or not? And that goal, you know, Mehdi mentioned something that is very user out-facing. But if I'm an AI system that does batch analysis on tons of data, then my customer facing is how long does it take me to process 5 terabytes of data and come up with insights. So every company needs to have that North Star and then align engineering around it. I think, you know, SRE is great only as a group of knowledge within the organization that standardizes and puts the right parameters for the other teams to follow. But SRE alone, a team, a group, and I see many companies, by the way, that engineering is completely separate. They just release and then DevOps deploy an SRE monitor. That's typically not a great way to answer all of these KPIs and questions, maybe some of them. And typically, by the way, if you only do SRE, that model, you'll probably answer the uptime question, because that's your main KPI, but nothing more.
I'm going to attempt to bridge both answers again, if I can here. You know, I think both sides are extremely valid. I think, you know, if you look at a larger organization, it's not like the organization has one single goal for the year, and it's not like everybody contributes to that goal directly, right? So you can imagine here in the centerpiece, it's delivering a better, exceptional digital experience, which is fantastic. That may be an organization's top level goal, but you can imagine that breaks down into, okay, well, what do we need to do to achieve that? Resiliency is a part of that. The cost efficiency is a part of that, right? And those probably get dished out to different business organizations and different units here with those particular focuses that can roll everything up. And then that way there are, I would say, you know, many ways in which many engineers or even people outside of the engineering department can contribute to all of these goals that level up to a better ultimate experience there. And I would say for each of these, because they're sort of all contributing to that, they're all sort of critical to the strategic value of the business for sure. However, as you go down that stack even more and more, you can imagine perhaps as you get down to the level of like infrastructure monitoring, I don't think anybody on this call will say we don't need to monitor the infrastructure. Is that very strategic? Well, I don't know. It's very critical to the business. You need to have it. No business run without it. Is that a strategic initiative in itself? I'm not too sure. So I would say sometimes maybe these could be viewed as tactical things, but you need them and you need to build on top of them to really that sort of like delivering a better like experience isn't something that a single team can go drive for. And I don't think it's a thing that everybody
it's a North Star.
Exactly. And everybody does things along the way to go and achieve that. And I don't think it's too complicated. I think, you know, a lot of the organizations I'm sure that we all work with are large and they're very complex and they can achieve perhaps all of these things here that you have on the screen. And it's not perhaps that impossible. I do think to Mehdi's original point, they should start with something more explicit, like a better experience. Okay, well, not even is it just a better experience, like how much of a better experience? How are you going to measure that? Like, how are you going to break that down? What does that really mean? Is it really serving the ad under 10 milliseconds? Like, I think they're going to be explicit about that and have that be pushed all the way down, thus that, you know, you can imagine if you're picking a tool, you're like, well, does this tool in any way, shape, or form help me measure that experience or any part of that experience at all? If it doesn't, maybe it's not the right tool there, as opposed to just all the features that that tool perhaps has, right? And I can even go to the data that the data set that you're producing again. And now that you know you have a tool that could go do that for you, or what data do I need? Like maybe you can achieve actually all of this with just logs. Maybe you do need logs and a little bit of metrics. Maybe you do need distributed tracing, but thinking about it from the outcome, working backwards, is generally, I would say, a much more effective way of doing it. I see everybody doing it almost the opposite way. Generate more data, pick my tools first, and then let's go figure out how I can improve the business. It's a really backwards way.
I mean, you know, we all run companies, so we all have sales teams, we all have marketing teams, right? So we as companies, we set goals for our teams, right? So we're going to do X number of millions of dollars this next year, right? So that's, we set with the goal. And then you work backward, right? What do I need? How many salespeople? What are the marketing plans? What are the demand gen plans? So we do this. I mean, every company does this, right? But somehow when it comes to monitoring or observability or whatever buzzword, we do it the opposite way. We, as you said, Martin, we start with like, let me go hire 1,000 salespeople, 1,000 marketing people, and then maybe we'll see what we can. Nobody will
buy a bunch of
right
tools
mind.
For those people,
right,
and then figure out what our goals are.
Like, so no one in their right mind allows that to happen in any other part of the organization. Why are we doing it here? And that's the thing that I scratch my head, or, you know, so obviously I've been scratching the head too much.
One thing is, I think good thing about confusion in the landscape for observability is the differentiator is going to be who has the best answer to so what question. Okay, I get it. You can what your features and functionalities, but this is my North Star. How can you connect the dots between capabilities that you're showing me on your in your PowerPoint and that? How can you help me with that? And if you look at the market that way, this is not very crowded market. There's actually not there's actually a shortage of folks that can bring value in many areas. Look at Israel only. I mean, maximize business impact of software teams. I mean, that is that has something to do with tools, but that's very process related. You have folks out there, and you have more and more that are providing platform for engineering leaders, VP engineering, and that the recent study showed 68% of IT resources are spent on tasks that are not business impact, and very close to that number of folks that don't even know how to answer. They don't have visibility in how resources are used, are being impacted. So if you go back to value of observability, I mean, yeah, I guess you can look at different levels or stages. It definitely is providing more, addressing the goals that were left behind by ineffectiveness of some monitoring tools. But there is much more to it, and there's a huge opportunity, because if you can really go back and do this, that 69% of these folks are VP and above level, and they're saying enable technology's competitive advantage, make us doesn't mean we don't have to be Uber, but we can be a bank with better mobile apps, and build better web presence. People will change bank because they have a better experience on their digital platform.
Better features, right? I mean, I know people that switched to some of the original banks that had the mobile deposit. Remember when that was like a novel thing?
Yeah.
So again, technology is an enabler of running the business. It goes back to that, right? And observability tools and teams and monitoring, all of this is really about enabling that competitive advantage where like that, you know, by running better, you keep your customers, right? And so 69%, I'm surprised that actually that, in my opinion, is low. It should be higher, but anyway.
what I wanted to do, the story that I wanted to pull from this side is actually 69 and 68%. These folks are saying this is game changing and it's driving our business forward. People will have their hands on it and saying it's a tactical thing, you know, for firefighting. And I think that going back to the confusion piece is when you put apply filters on and say, okay, and ask right questions and say, okay, can you do this? Can you enable better or differentiating user experiences? Can you put my software teams in service of creating a business value? And if you can, how do you do that? That becomes a kind of inclusion criteria into that observability bucket. Now a lot of people will run into be jumping on that bandwagon.
I think it goes back to what Ariel said earlier, which is at the end of the day, the systems are getting so complex that there are not going to be enough people to hire to look at dashboards. And we need to move fast to remediation. At the end of the day, this is the end goal is not monitoring observability or whatever you want to call it. The end goal is how do I recover as quickly as possible from something, a security issue, an outage, a failure, a hardware failure, whatever. And observability for me is just like that bridge, if you want, that allows you to drive outcomes that are automation. Because there's, Martin, how many microservices did you guys run at Uber ultimately?
4,000.
4,000, right?
More than 4,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There is no way in hell that you can hire enough people today at the cost they are to manage, monitor, look at dashboards and wait for something to happen. All of this needs to drive automation and remediation and intelligence, right? Where you don't have to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and jump on a stupid conference call with 30 people. Yeah. Is it the database? Is it the network? Is it Amazon? Is it Cloudflare? Like right. This shit needs to get solved by automation. And if people are putting monitoring tools, observability tools that are not ultimately driving that, then again, that's bad. And by the way, because if you don't automate and you're still doing monitoring and observability with 30 people on a conference bridge at 2 o'clock in the morning, you are impacting the business, right? Again, that horrible user experience, that's where it gets impacted. So this is where, you connect the dots, and this is about automation at the end of the day.
I think this is maybe part of the reason why it is such a confusing vendor landscape, because all three of our companies here provide, we have very different use cases we're trying to solve here. Right. However, we're all trying to drive at the same goal, as you said earlier, and the way that we put it is, even before you root cause and fix the issue, can you get detected or triage the issue? Like right. Those things are true, and those concepts are true right throughout all of our products and the use cases that we try to solve. I think that's why it's so confusing, because that's true. That's where, and perhaps it's the term observability now, everything under that umbrella is being grouped together. However, when you look at the actual problems you want to solve, I don't think there's a single platform out there that solves all these problems across your entire stack, your entire business and whatnot. So I think that's why it's so confusing, because from a high level perspective, it looks like there's a million vendors in this space. However, Bojan, as you said, as you dig in a little bit for like, what's the specific problem you're trying to solve, that actually narrows it down. Like if you pick a particular use case, or perhaps for us, you pick a particular sort of type of architecture that you run, or a particular part of the problem that you want to solve, then you narrow that down to a few vendors that are very few, yes. That particular use case, right? And then when you pick from there, it's actually not as confusing. But so I think that might be the recommendation for companies out there, is it looks confusing, but really figure out, dig one level deeper into, okay, well, you do want, let's say, to enable technology as a competitive advantage. What does that mean for you? Is that better visibility to end users? Is that the fact that you just switched architectures and now you can't you can't get as great insights as you used to? Is it that you have huge data production issues? Like whatever that is, whatever they think are the top priorities, then looking at a smaller set of tools out there that are aimed at solving those use cases, I think makes the landscape at least far less confusing for the end companies there.
Martin, I think where you hit on something that is important. It's like at the end of the day, Mr. and Mrs. Company out there, there is no single shoe that fits you. Well, you're very unique. Every company is very unique. Like I remember talking to folks like, oh, Mehdi, we tried to implement the SRE book of Google and we failed. Yeah, because that was for Google. Only Google is Google. There is no
Right.
other company in the world like Google. The same way Uber is Uber, right? And so implementing something in a cookie cutter manner is a recipe for disaster. There is no such thing as like, I'm just going to buy tool one and just deploy it and I'm going to reproduce the same result I heard my friend CIO implement somewhere else. Like, understand your uniqueness and then buy the right tools to do the right job and answer the right question for you.
I agree. And I think speaking about confusion, I think Martin's point is probably, for us as an analyst firm, probably the best approach to tackle this later in the year is tell me who you are, tell me what you're trying to do. I mean, nobody walks into Best Buy and asks what is the best TV that you have. I might want to play video games on it, and somebody might want to watch sitcoms. Tell me what you're trying to do with it, and I'll tell you what's best for you. But good thing about that is business requirements and technology requirements are shifting in the direction of the more dynamic environments and cloud native, and that will be probably a very important kind of cutoff of where folks won't be wasting that much marketing money of trying to get into that bandwagon if they are not effective in cloud native environments.
I like that example there. I wonder if it's even TVs. It might be even walk into Best Buy and say, what's the best electronic you have? And you're like,
no, that's
tell me, what should I buy? What should, you know, here is a pile of money. Give me something, because I told people I'm going to come out of Best Buy with something.
We have a couple of minutes left. Let's spend a minute or so each, and kind of what would be your key advices, recommendations, folks that are listening to this. We covered a lot of stuff today, and I hope this was helpful. But maybe one or two key things that should walk away with from listening to this today.
I can start.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
Everyone go for it.
I think, you know, for me, it's everything that we've discussed here. Define what's your end target. Define how your organization is operating and what's the right way for you to get there. Find a tool that answers your particular needs best, and build harness the organizational structure to support that. That's the end. At the end, by the way, tools will not solve anything. You gotta have your organization around them, and it's not just adoption as using the tool, but actually the tool needs to fit to how your organization is built. And then that's the best way. And also try to define a very specific target and make sure that everything you do serves that target. Don't try to go. So we talked about like 20 different things, but that's exactly the type of organization. So if you're an e-com, like Mehdi mentioned, then it's all about the load times and no failures when you check out. But if you're a cyber company, it's all about not losing a single event and having low latency. So those things are completely different, and there are different tools that serve them. So that's my main takeaway.
Yeah, 100%. I'm actually surprised how aligned we are. I've actually never met Mehdi or Ariel before in person, and this is definitely not organized or anything like that. But yeah, we're very aligned there. So from starting from the outcomes you want to achieve, the use case you want to achieve, and then working your way backwards into the tooling that may be good for it, and then working your way backwards into how you even instrument to produce the data to feed into these tools and whatnot. Sort of taking that backwards approach, I think, is the ideal way. Into Mehdi, what you said earlier, this is how we run every other part of the business. It's odd that we don't do this for observability. And the last thing I'll say that is, I think the folks on the call will agree that, you know, if you do end up picking a company that begins with C, that also may be a great.
You can't go wrong.
Exactly, right.
You can't go wrong. No, I mean, I think I'm going to sound like a broken record after Martin and Ariel. So start with why. Why are you doing something? You don't have to buy observability or monitoring, right? If you don't care about it, but start with why. I would start small. win. I see a lot of people go and spend millions of dollars and then they say, I don't see the results. So I'm more of a, like move a little bit of rocks, a little bit of sand before you try to move the mountain. So you have some wins and you can show to the business and to the people that are giving you this budget that there are some benefits. And always again, reminder of like why. I mean, and then you can go and buy the tools, but start with the why.
And if I can add one tiny thing of start with the why is, many times the people who make the decisions on tools for observability or like us here is the technical department. It's a big decision. Have a quick talk with the business departments. Get the CRO, get the head of support, get the CEO, ask them where they see problems in the company, what's their goals and how you can support that. And then don't just, choose based on your internal needs, but actually support the entire business.
Yeah. Ariel, you reminded me of this customer that we have, and I had an interesting conversation. So you walk into their office and you have the picture of the CEO, and the CEO is saying, customer experience is everything. We're going to become the most customer experience centric company in the world, right? Everywhere, like you see these huge banners. I loved it. But then you go and talk to the people that were manning the monitoring tools or observability tools, and they were completely disconnected. It's like, oh no, I only care about availability. It's like, yeah, but I just heard your CEO say that you're going to be the most customer-centric company in the world. You cannot achieve that by just being up or down. You have to be fast. You know what I mean? And it's just like, so people need to connect the dots, and then the business and technology again must be aligned.
Yes.
The folks at the people level.
I really enjoy conversation with you folks, and I know we can keep going for hours. I can at least. Thank you all very much. I hope this will be beneficial for folks who will tune in, and thank you again.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you, Martin. Ariel, it was a pleasure, gentlemen.
Pleasure to meet you guys. Power to companies starting with C. Have a
There you
good
go.
Bye.
There we go.
Bye, guys.